OK, we're going to go straight to Llandudno, where Jeremy Corbyn is about to address the Welsh Labour conference. There he is at the podium, less than 24 hours after Corbyn Jones said that he's stepping down in the autumn. Let's have a listen.
Thank you, Chair, for that lovely introduction, and thank you for the welcome we've had here in Llandudno at this conference. And it's great to follow our new General Secretary, Jenny Formby. She's nearly been 3 weeks in the job now. She's getting very used to it. And she's doing a fantastic job because she's determined that our party will be absolutely ready for an election whenever it comes. And she's working to build the party to be ready for a general election. We've just had some obituaries, and I think it would be right for me to just say this. Those people that have worked so hard for the Labour movement all our lives must always be remembered. Rodri for his work, and I'll say more about him a little bit later in the speech. Carl Sargent for his work, and all the others that have been mentioned. They joined the party because they wanted to live in a decent, better world. They joined the party because they wanted the party to face up to the problems we face of the imbalance of power and justice in our society, and they gave their lives to it. We should learn, always learn, from those that went before us. And when we give awards to people, we do it because they stood up, often in difficult circumstances. We've given awards to a number of people who've worked very hard. I'm very pleased that Lisa Power has been given an award today for LGBT campaigning, because I remember working with Lisa against Section 28, when the Tories tried to criminalise people. The disgusting legislation they produced at that time. And to campaign against it was actually very unpopular. The Sun newspaper condemned everyone that did so. And in a few weeks' time, Lisa's coming back to the constituency where she worked at that time, mine, in Islington North, to take part in a celebration of that victorious campaign of the right of people to live the life they want to live rather than have it dictated to them from above. Lisa, thank you for what you did. And those like Nick who campaign on homelessness and so many things. That's our party, that's our movement, always campaigning and always challenging. That's what makes us Labour, that's what makes us strong. So it's fantastic being back here in Llandudno. But it's also fantastic being in Labour Wales. And so I want to start by paying tribute to Corbyn Jones and thank him for his service as leader of Welsh Labour and the First Minister. Corbyn called me yesterday morning. He texted me and said, "Jeremy, it's urgent, you've got to call me back." And I was in between a meeting with the New Zealand Prime Minister and going campaigning in Hillingdon. So, of course, I called Corbyn, and he told me the decision he had made. And I wanted to say, and I did say then, and I say again now, thank you, Corbyn, for all you've done, do, and will do, you're not done yet, mate, for Labour in Wales, because you've led us to unprecedented electoral success, forming 2 Labour Welsh Assembly governments. And in standing down, he'll be standing down as First Minister in the autumn, and this conference must pay tribute to Corbyn for his tireless commitment to Wales, to a more equal country, and determination to stand up for the people of Wales and be a strong voice for devolution and democracy. I want to say on behalf of the whole Labour Party, Corbyn, thank you for all you've done and all the contribution you've made to our party. By way of a gift, he's offered to take me to the next English-Welsh football match. So, Corbyn, thank you, and we're obviously going to be talking together a lot more about the experiences of government in Wales and what we can learn from the Welsh Government as we get ready to move into government in Westminster for the whole of the UK. I also want to congratulate the new Deputy Leader of Welsh Labour, Caroline Harris. I know that from when you're sitting behind me during Prime Minister's question time, your absolute passion and determination and ready ability and willingness to give advice. Don't take that rubbish, go back at it. Fantastic. And we've worked together in Parliament, and you're going to be a fantastic deputy. In just 3 years of being an MP, you've made a huge impact on the Labour Party, standing up for the causes you believe in and making your voice heard. The campaign to end burial fees for families and parents who've lost children has been nothing short of inspirational. Your victory is not just a great tribute to you, but also a fitting and lasting legacy to your late son, Martin. Thank you so much. So congratulations, Carolyn. I look forward to working with you in your new role as we continue to push Labour's message of building a society that works for all, not just those at the top. I also want to say a huge thank you to Julie Morgan for the dignified and principled way in which she fought the campaign. We've known each other a long time, and she's been a bold voice, never afraid to make herself heard, whether it was opposing the disastrous Iraq war or standing up for women's rights. Julie, you've always been there and will always be there, and I want to thank you for that, your commitment and your socialist principles. And I want to thank our wonderful Shadow Secretary of State for Wales, Christina Rees, who's here on the platform today. Her dedication and commitment to Wales means she's without doubt the best person to stand up for Wales against the Tories in Westminster, and she's a brilliant voice around the Shadow Cabinet table, explaining what's happening in Wales, but also where we can learn lessons and work with the Welsh Government. Conference. It's been quite a year for our party, both here and across the whole of the UK. The Tories didn't exactly hide their ambitions in the general election to make gains in Wales, and we completely proved them and the mainstream media wrong. Labour is not just a political party, but as Jenny was explaining, a huge movement. The fantastic rallies we held during the election campaign, early on in the campaign on Whitchurch Common in Cardiff. It was a bit chaotic because there was about a sort of 500% overreach on the numbers of people turning up. And so we weren't totally prepared for that, but it was absolutely incredible. And then on the last day of the campaigning, when I travelled from Scotland to London doing rallies all the way, we went to the beach at Corbyn Bay, and we had thousands of people there in beautiful sunshine, and the tide was very kind and stayed out, so that none of us were flooded or drowned in that. But that enthusiasm, that determination, was what is the hallmark of that election campaign. Our manifesto, our commitment, our enthusiasm, our activists, our people. And you know what? We're going to do it all again and defeat them. And what brought people together was that clear vision of becoming a fairer, more equal and more just society. And yes, it is a radical vision, but it's also, absolutely, think about it, common sense. Because it's only common sense to move our economy away from the neoliberal dogma of the 1980s and to a more modern agenda of investment in communities, high wages, secure employment, and the inclusion of everybody in society, giving everybody a chance instead of just an elite at the top. Whereas in the rest of the UK, Labour is setting out a vision for the future, here in Wales, Labour is in government, showing the rest of us how our values, Labour's socialist values, can be put into practice. So the fantastic general election result here in Wales was not just an endorsement of our radical programme for government, but also a positive change that a Labour government and devolution has brought about. We are the party of devolution, and we're proud of it. Like all the best ideas in history, devolution was once derided by our political and media establishments as being idealistic and unworkable. But as a party, we've proved how well it can work for the people of Wales. That's why, in our general election manifesto, we committed ourselves to building on devolution, to introduce new legislation in Westminster to entrench and expand the devolution settlement. The passing of our comrade, Rhodri Morgan, who was obviously a giant, if not the giant, of devolution politics in Wales, has caused us all to reflect on the achievements and successes of the last 19 years. Not only was Rhodri, as that lovely video showed, a warm and generous and decent colleague and very witty with it, sometimes cuttingly witty in a brilliant way. I loved it. I knew him as a Member of Parliament and later as First Minister, but he also laid the ground for the success of devolution. He had a clear vision of a distinctly Welsh socialism, strong universalist public services, reduced inequality between those at the top and those at the bottom, and a government that responds to the needs of the people, not the needs of the establishment. That was Rhodri's ambition as First Minister, and continues to be Welsh Labour's ambition today. But like so much of what we cherish and fight for as the Labour Party, they're ideals that have been continually put under threat by the Conservative government in Westminster. Their plans for a Tory Brexit, intent on driving down wages, rights at work and rights for consumers, will cause immense harm to the Welsh economy, which is exactly why the Tories are so unwilling to give the Welsh Government a say in the final deal. Contrast this with our approach, which would put jobs and the economy first, protect workers' rights and living standards, and ensure a strong voice for the Welsh Government throughout the Brexit process, as well as ensuring all powers that are handed back from Brussels are handed directly to the devolved administrations across the UK instead of being hoarded and centralised in the corridors of Whitehall. This Labour response to Brexit is essential if we are to protect the progressive agenda of the Welsh Government. An agenda which is leading the way in laying the ground for a future Labour government across the whole of the UK and providing a real alternative to the heartlessness and dysfunction of Tory rule. A heartlessness which has never been so evident in the totally callous way in which we have treated the Windrush generation. This week, something rotten at the heart of government has come to the surface. The Windrush scandal has exposed how British citizens who came to our country to rebuild it after the Second World War have faced deportation because they couldn't clear the deliberately unreachable bar set by Theresa May's hostile environment for migrants. We've seen one government minister after another, including the Prime Minister herself, trying to dodge and weave around the facts to avoid scrutiny and entirely justified criticism. But the facts are clear. It's not as if they weren't warned. At the time the Tories were pushing their hostile policy through Parliament, some of us warned about the consequences this could have for many people and families. We're now seeing the consequences in a string of harrowing human stories. People's lives ripped apart because of the personal decision and actions of Theresa May and her government. The mother of Windrush citizen, 57-year-old Dexter Bristol, who died last month after being classed as an illegal immigrant, has said she believes the stress of the experience contributed to his tragic death. She argued powerfully and convincingly, this is racism. He was the victim of their policies. There was a lot of racism when I came here. This is worse. This is the government. Now we learn today that yet another government policy to force voters at election time to prove their identity at polling stations by producing official documents would have a disproportionate impact on people from black and minority ethnic communities. It's the same hostile environment all over again, shutting fellow citizens out of public life, treating communities who have made Britain their home as second-class citizens. It's disgraceful, it's discriminatory, and it must be brought to an end. As we pass the 50th anniversary of Enoch Powell's despicable Rivers of Blood speech, we should use this occasion not only to condemn division and hate, but also to contemplate the words and rhetoric we use and the impact they can have on other people's lives. That's why, under a Labour government, there will be no bogus immigration targets, no discrimination between people of different races and religions, and no racist scapegoating of migrant communities emanating from government departments, because Labour will never do that. A Labour government wants the state to make a positive influence on people's lives. And there is no better example of this than the new National Development Bank here in Wales. Started last year by the Welsh Government to offer finance for small and medium local businesses, giving them a chance to compete against the faceless multinationals and giving the local economy a significant boost as a result. By not sticking to the outdated Thatcherite ideology that the UK Conservative government is enslaved to, and by realising that public lending institutions can play a central role in a modern economy, the Welsh Government has filled the gaps in lending, helped to solve a problem and so many businesses have had ever since the 2007 financial crash. The Development Bank for Wales can be a precursor to the National Investment Bank and regional development banks that will be created across the UK under a Labour government, helping fund small businesses and cooperatives to support growth. Public lending for small private business is a common-sense move. It's a great shame the Tories refuse to see it. Not only does supporting this principle show that it is Labour that is the party actually of small business, while the Tories only represent wealth-extracting multinationals, but the Welsh Government's successful creation of the Development Bank proves that Labour's ideas work in practice and can make a real difference. That's another model for us.
Corbyn, they're talking at the Welsh Labour Party conference in Llandudno. The Labour leader accusing Theresa May of being personally responsible for the Windrush generation controversy. He says by setting a deliberately unreachable bar with her, quote, hostile environment immigration policies. Jeremy Corbyn saying people's lives ripped apart because of the personal decisions and actions of Theresa May and her government. So more on what Jeremy Corbyn has been saying and reaction, of course, right here on Sky News. We're going to go to a break now, though. Back in a moment.